Hey everyone, welcome back to Williamson Ridge Outdoors. Today I want to do a video about our wood boiler. A lot of people wonder how a wood boiler works, and today I'm going to take you through and just kind of give you the basic idea of how a wood boiler works. And this could vary a little bit, but I'm going to show you how mine works, but it should be a basic principle pretty much between all of them. There's different kinds and stuff too that, for instance, mine is a Nature's Comfort NCB 250 coal. So this is designed to be able to burn coal in it also. It's lined with fire bricks. Now I don't think that Nature's Comfort I don't think they actually build wood boilers anymore. I got mine a few years back, but this is a 250 gallon version. And a lot of people think that, you know, when you talk about 250 gallons, that you are heating 250 gallons of city water and then putting it into your house. So there's a lot to a wood boiler to make it efficient and to make it work. So let me take you through and show you some of the things that make them work and how they work, and kind of explain this a little bit, because whenever I was buying one I had no idea, and I kind of thought the same exact thing about it heating your water and stuff in your house. So let me show you how all that stuff works. So first of all, we've got our wood boiler here. So you've got a fire inside here that's basically heating up a boiler, or a big drum that's hollowed out where, you know, the fire's inside that hollow drum. But on the outsides of this thing, there's 250 gallons of water around this tube that goes back into this boiler. So a lot of people think that your city water comes in, fills this up, and then it circulates it through your house. But that's not at all how it works. You've got a fire inside here that's heating up this 250 gallons of water, and that can be a set temperature. I set mine actually about 170, but I believe you can set it between like 140 and all the way up to about 190 if you wanted it to be that hot. So back here in the back of the boiler, we've got a few electrical connections, and then we've got water connections and stuff back here. We've got a thermostat right here that you can, again, control the temperature that you want the water inside the boiler to stay at. You've also got a fan down here that this fan blows air into the boiler to to build the fire. So if your wood stove is getting low and the fire's not been burning, the water temperature starts dropping, then that fan will kick on and blow air into the boiler and really build that fire right back up real fast and start really creating a lot of heat in there to warm the water back up. So you can see we've got a temperature gauge on here. Mine's showing it's about 165 or so right now. And then we've got a water pump right here that this pump actually circulates water through the entire house. And I'll show you how all this stuff runs here in just a second. But basically you've got cold water coming in. This is coming from the house, going into the tank, and then leaving the tank and going out as hot water after the stove heats it up. So this is actually going down and into the ground in an insulated pipe. And it runs underneath the ground over to my house and goes underneath the floor on the house. So let me take you under the house and show you what's there. All right, so we are now under the house, and you can see up there on that far wall those blue and red lines coming in through the wall from underground. Then they just go up and attach to the floor, and they run back to our furnace. So once the lines get to the furnace, you've got your hot line coming in from the stove. That's this right here actually is 170 degrees right here. So you can't hang on to it for very long, but this comes into the furnace, and there's a heat exchanger right inside the furnace right here. Basically looks like a radiator. And the air from the furnace that it brings in from like your cold air returns blows through that radiator or through that heat exchanger and converts that to warm air, and it blows it through your house. And then the cold side, as it comes out the other side, runs out the other side and into the cold return line and sends it right back to the wood stove. Now in my particular case, I actually have an all-electric system, and what this actually is right here, I've got a thermostat setting here on the side of my furnace. And what this thermostat does is if the temperature of this line is above 100 degrees, it will not kick on the elements inside the electric furnace. So for the main heat, you know, I've got a heat pump, but then if the heat pump's not keeping up, then it'll kick on those electric elements inside the furnace to heat up the house. Well, this actually, with the wood stove, that keeps that from kicking on so that you don't have a chance of running that electric heat and your water from your wood stove. So this was something that was really handy because it's just set, and if something would happen and my stove would actually burn out and the water temperature would get cold, then it would allow this to kick on and actually use the electric heat to heat the house. So kind of like having backup heat and not even having to, you know, have to switch anything. It'll just automatically switch due to that thermostat being on there. So a lot of people think that, you know, it's like, man, that's a 250-gallon tank. That thing must use a lot of water. But it doesn't. It recirculates the same water over and over and over. It's in a loop so that the water that's in the stove is hot. It goes out to your furnace, gets cooled down, then returns back to your stove and gets heated up again. So we also heat our water with our wood burning stove. And, you know, I was thinking the same thing whenever I originally got it. I was like, how in the world does it do that and keep the same water all the time? Like, I thought it had to heat up in the stove and then it puts it into the house. But you never use any water out of the stove at all. It always circulates the same 250 gallons of water, and it uses heat exchangers in order to move the heat from the stove to the heat and the water in the house, or from the stove to the air in the house. It's all done with heat exchangers. So let me take you in the house and I'll show you a small heat exchanger that's used for our hot water so you can get an idea of what that looks like. So don't mind the mess in my little room here. This is actually a storage room where we have the hot water tank. And you say, well, if you got a wood burner, why do you need a hot water tank? Because the hot water tank acts as a storage tank. So the stove heats up the 250 gallons and circulates it through the house. Then it brings it in here to the heat exchanger. And it basically has two sets of water vanes, or whatever you want to call them, in there, that the stove is circulating through there all the time. And then when it circulates the city water through it, it brings that heat from the stove water to the city water and then dumps it into the hot water tank. And so right now the hot water tank is not even on, but it's got 170 degree water in it because it's used as the storage for the wood stove. So every time you turn the hot water on in the house, it runs the city water through this heat exchanger and puts it into the hot water tank, and it consistently increases the heat. Now, if you go for a few days to where that you say you're gone for a couple days and you don't use this, well, then your water might be down to 100 degrees or 125, whatever. But as soon as you turn the water on in one of the faucets on the hot side, then it starts circulating that hot water and bringing that new hot water into the tank and warming everything back up. So the longer you run the hot water, the hotter your hot water gets. So this is basically the same thing that's underneath the house in the furnace. The difference is this runs city water through it and runs the stove water through it, whereas the one that's in the furnace runs the stove water through it and it runs air through it. And it's basically an exchange of the stove hot water and exchanges that heat over to another source. In your hot water tank, you know, instead of that, it doesn't run all the time, because if you did, it would be basically wasting heat and energy, and your stove would kick on a lot more and burn a lot more wood. So what it does is, as your city water comes in and it goes through that heat exchanger, then it starts cooling the water that's going into the stove, and then it might require the system to kick on and warm the storage water back up. So like I was saying, your city water never comes into this stove. It's a set 250 gallons. You have to treat it and everything to keep corrosion and stuff from happening, and all the fittings and the heat exchangers and all that kind of stuff. And you can't just take and put city water in it and be okay. You have to put additives and chemicals in there to keep it from corroding and messing up your system. So that's why that it's kept separate between the two, and it uses those heat exchangers so that this stove water is never touched. Unless you get low, you can add water to it. I've had the seals or the gaskets around the doors kind of start going bad, and it start leaking some air through it, and it would cause it to get too hot, and then it would boil over. So if you have water loss like that, then you can add water to it, but you have to make sure that you add the chemicals to it to neutralize the bad stuff and the calcium and all that kind of stuff that's in your city water. So with all that, you know, everything that goes in the house, like I was saying, the stove water comes right back out here. This particular stove is actually set up to where I can actually put another branch or two on it. I could actually run it to another location, like, you know, say if I had a house next door, you know, you could heat 2 houses with this one stove. Or I can put a heater in my garage and run a line to that heater and be able to have heat in there and heat it off of this stove without having to buy a new heat system or buy a new stove. It can be added to in order to, you know, do that. So thanks for checking out the video today. Like I was saying, I just wanted to share this because whenever I was buying a wood stove, I had no idea how any of this stuff worked. And I was like, well, how in the world do you get the wood heat from out here in your yard to inside your house? And then how do you continuously heat water, and how does the city water work, and how, you know, it was just a big deal that I did not understand. So hopefully this video kind of helps somebody out and help you to understand how a wood stove works. I know there's different kinds of stoves. There's some that I think have, you know, like little wood bricks or something that they burn. Some of them burn a lot cleaner than what, you know, this stove does now. This one is, like I say, several years old, and you know, it was supposed to be like 75–80% efficient at the time that I bought it, but they've actually come out with more efficient stoves and stuff now and new styles. But I think the basis of just about all of them kind of work the same. You know, if they're a water jacketed stove, then they're going to take that transfer of heat from the fire to the water, circulate it through your house, and then bring that water right back to your stove. And it just goes through the process of using heat exchangers in each section that you want to heat a different thing. So if you want to heat water, you got to have a heat exchanger for that. If you want to heat air, then you've got to have a heat exchanger for that. And if I was going to put a furnace or a blower inside my garage, it would be another blower with a heat exchanger that the water from this stove would run to that furnace and then go through that heat exchanger and then blow out as warm air inside the garage. So like I was saying, I hope this helps somebody out. If it did, I appreciate you hitting that thumbs up button, and we'll see you on the next one.